that was an interesting time for me because suddenly I was being called on because I was a woman writer, that suddenly they wanted somebody who would write with a woman's sensibilities and point of view.
Why do you think at that time it was changing?
Well, the times were changing. It was the beginning of the women's movement being really successful. My own friends were starting to go to take jobs and work. I mean, my best friends who all had hobbies were now taking their hobbies and turning them into careers, and they were all very successful. So it was times they were changing. Mm-hmm. That was interesting because that came about during a Writers Guild strike, and certain of the production companies, I forgot what it's called, but they signed a paper that said they would go with whatever the strike brought in. Mm. So they were allowed to make movies. So I was called by this company, and I almost fell off my chair when I got the phone call. It was from the man who became famous for having a magazine that was...
Oh, Hugh Hefner?
Yeah, right. I was trying to build up to the man who was as anti-female as you could get. Not that he was anti-female, it was this is what he was selling was not what I was selling. Mm. So I get a call from Hugh Hefner's office, and I come in and I meet this producer, and he says, what do you want to write? I said, what do I want to write? It's the first time anybody ever said that to me. You have to appreciate how odd that is. Because you would come in and they say, I want to do a show about this, I want to do that, I want to do this. And he said, well, write a movie. What do you want to write about? And I thought to myself, this is really bizarre. So I said, I want to do a movie about women. And I'm talking to Hugh Hefner's world. And I explained to him about a whole series of things that I wanted to put in this movie. One of it is the war, that it's almost an all-female movie, World War II, I might say. And they're all women, either mothers waiting for their sons to come home or women waiting for their husbands. And I wanted to do a coming-of-age story because this really happened to me. So not only was I doing a story about all women, but I was, for the first time in all the years in television and ever again, was a story that I actually lived. And it happened to me. It was because then I got into the next area of the fact that living in New York City in the summertime, it was so hot, the wives and mothers took their families and went to the mountains. And then we get into the subject of the whole Jewish element of the Catskills. So I'm selling all this to this guy who doesn't even know what the hell I'm talking about. And he says, I love it. Whatever it is, you do it. I said, okay, so you have to understand that people went up to the Catskills because there were parts of the United States where Jewish people could not go and were not welcome. You got all that. Now, this is the story I'm selling you. And I made this all up as I'm sitting there because I knew what story I wanted to tell. Because it happened to me one summer when I was 15 or so, whatever. And I went up to the Catskill Mountains with my mother, and we stayed at one of these funky little hotels that all these Jewish women went to. And I wrote this script, and I send it in, and once again, I don't hear from him, and I say, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. So I call him up, and I say, what do you want for the rewrite? He said, I don't want to rewrite, it's perfect. This I have never heard in my life, and never did ever again. It's perfect, you're not changing anything, not a word, we're shooting. I thought I died and gone to heaven. Anyway, what happened at the same time, which is now gets in a whole subject I don't want to get into, is I was doing another movie of the week at the same time, which my husband was directing. And that by that time I was in a marriage that was starting not to work. And all I wanted to do was go on the set of The Summer Without Boys because I wanted to see what they did to this very specific kind of story. And he didn't let me go. He wanted me to stay on the set of this other movie we were doing, which was also a movie about a woman and kind of another coming-of-age story, a different kind. So I didn't see Summer Without Boys until it was done, and I had a fit when I saw the movie, because it could have looked like any place, anywhere. It did not have any of the history of the Catskills. It was just a place people went that had rooms, and it was a hotel, and but the script worked because there was a story about these women who were waiting for the men to come home, and about a girl who there were no boys up there because the boys were all away at war, so that was The Summer Without Boys. And that there was one other girl there, my age, who was not a very nice person. I mean, she wanted to get in trouble, and she wanted to pick up sailors in the city and things like that. So it was a very interesting story. So the script worked, but the background had totally been whitewashed. They had no idea what I was talking about. They just went up to someplace at a resort. And meanwhile, I'm having trouble on the other show because I don't like the way it's being done. And so that was kind of an interesting time.